As a little kid, I remember, this big hoopla about your dad is coming, your dad is coming. And what that meant was he was coming home from the military or whatever to visit, right? He was a Marine, so he was home for a visit. So I remember doing what they did, his brothers and sisters, being excited when he got home, but they were telling me it was my dad. Okay. So I'm probably in the range of like 4 to like 6, 7 years old, maybe. So what's happening is he comes, and then he comes with this wood panel type of McGruff dog in an army fatigue. I mean, a Marine fatigue outfit with the Marine hat and everything or whatnot with his name on it and everything. I remember that being one of the first gifts he gave me. I think with a record player. But I don't know if that was all in the same time or like the second time. Okay. So the reason why I don't know all of this stuff is because he's home from the military, but he's also home from his wife. Yeah, his wife. He came to visit his illegitimate daughter that his wife doesn't know anything about. So I'm living with his siblings and his parents. He brought me here. And he brought me here because my mother attempted suicide. So this story here is about my narcissistic father. Bleh, I hate the way that just sounded. My narcissistic father and my life with his, I guess, narcissistic family dynamic. Like everybody was either a narcissist or codependent with each other, and like it kind of branched out, kind of like in a Signet type manner or whatever. But I'm gonna go through all of that like in pieces because it's just so much. I'm gonna have to address each one, each family dynamic like separately so you can understand what I'm talking about. Because if I mesh all this together, you'll be so lost in the fact that I'm not gonna use names and stuff like that. Yeah, it won't do you any justice with listening to my story. But anyway, when I was about, him coming to visit here and there, it was weird, I would say. But I had friends that had that were being raised by their grandparents as well, and then I also had friends that were being raised by step parents that were suffering from physical abuse that you could see. And I'm starting, now that I'm older, I'm wondering if it was sexual abuse as well. But however, we'll just stick with the topic right now. And that's what was going on at my house. So, everybody would be happy and everything. And so I just would go with the flow. I didn't know anything different. When you don't know anything different, you just go with the flow, you know. And if your people keep you hindered, just kind of like, so I was raised with my father's siblings, and it was almost like a slave mentality, kind of slave master type mentality. Like the elders, they kept the information, and then they told you what to think, And so that's the type of dynamic I was raised in versus, reading it for myself. So anyway, when I got a little older, I started asking questions and stuff like that, and people didn't have any answers for me, So at this point, my father's out of the military because he's an alcoholic and all of this stuff. And I started asking my aunt, who's really not my aunt, blood relation, but she's kind of like a influential caretaker that I had. She had children by my actual biological father's brother. And so she was basically suffering from the same dynamics that my mother would have suffered from had she made it around these parts. And what I'm saying is, so, okay. So anyway, what I found out about why I only know my dad, the people who are claiming who my dad is, who eventually, who he would show up with these weird gifts and then leave, and then eventually he was just there all the time. I had an aunt who had kids by I consider her aunt. She had kids by my dad's brother. She told me what really happened to my mom and why I don't know my mom. She said, you were brought here because your mother shot herself in the head with your dad's gun. I'm like 16 at the time. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, I ain't never heard nothing like of the sort. Like, this whole situation, like, been in the dark for me. So I'm like, what? So anyway, as soon as she told me that, I like started reflecting back as a little girl. I remember this really odd situation where I was about to go to the door at our family home. And they were teaching me how to answer the door for strangers and stuff like that. Ask who is it and all this kind of stuff. So they were all sitting down at first. So I go to the door, who is it or whatever. And then all of a sudden it was like the whole mode, household, everything just shifted. Like everybody just got up real aggressively and started like pushing me out the way, and everybody like covered the door and all kind of type. And I was so upset. I was scared because of how everybody was behaving. So I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? So they were blocking the doorway and I couldn't see the window that was in the same room. So I just like, all of a sudden, like at the last minute, I ran to the like, the back window to the next room, the adjacent room, it was a wall dividing the rooms or whatnot. So I go to that room and I look out the window or whatever, and it's like 3 women, and they like getting back in the car and everything, and I basically watched them ladies get in the car and they leave and everything. So I'm like, so when she started telling me about my mama shooting herself in the head and all this stuff, I went to that time when I was a little girl, like probably like 7, where the whole room just shifted because these 3 women came. Now, we used to have Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. I knew what those were. But it was like they were Jehovah's Witnesses, but it was like it was a hostile situation. So it was just like I was scared. So I was crying and stuff. Like, why they ain't let me answer the door? And so anyway, I go to the other room, like I said, and all I saw was the 3 ladies getting back in the car, and they left. I didn't know what it was. So in my head, I thought, I didn't know what that was. So when she started telling me, my aunt started telling me about my family dynamics and why I don't know my mama and why I'm calling my grandma my mama and my granddaddy daddy, and then I'm calling my daddy by some childhood nickname. I'm like, what? So I'm confused or whatever, but and I told my aunt I wouldn't say nothing, and I kind of betrayed her because I didn't know I was really saying nothing, but I really wanted answers. So I guess in my little girl mind at 16, I kind of betrayed her. I didn't mean to. So my family was all upset. And so I just, even though I messed up, I just, I stood on her side and I was like, you know what? If y'all say anything to her or if y'all do anything to her, I'm done talking to y'all because I asked y'all first and y'all didn't tell me. So, they covertly kind of underhandedly did some stuff because not long after that, I had an aunt that she was really close to pass away, and I was on my way to go tell her that the aunt had passed away, and then the elders on my side told me that they was gonna handle it. She had kids by my uncle, my father's brother, and so I trusted in them to go, when with the kids coming and everything, I entrusted in them to tell her, who had passed and everything, who she was close to. And they just pretended that they was going to tell her. But the whole time, they didn't even want her to come. So anyway, she didn't wind up coming. She was devastated. Like, she felt so abandoned and hurt and devastated. And the whole time, I felt guilty because I was going to tell her, but they had told me they was going to handle it. So I left it alone. This is the same person that actually was the only person that told me the truth about my mama. So I'm kicking myself in the butt about that. But that's another story. One of my last narcissists. One of my last narcissists I walked up on with him and his new supply. I knew his supply's name. Not because I went through his phone, because he had the face recognition, thumbprint, the whole bit. So it wasn't nothing I could, break into or nothing like that. You can't fake somebody's face. But I noticed that, she would call a lot when I was around. And so her name and face did pop up because I don't know if it was like a picture that he took for her ID or if it was linked to her, I don't know, one of her social media pages. I'm not sure, but it looked like a social media page. That's why I'm saying that. But anyway, one day, because like I said, this is one of the last guys I talked to. We stayed in the same neighborhood. I went for a walk or whatever because I was really antsy that night. And so I just went walking or whatnot to clear my mind or whatnot. And who do I bump into? I bump into him and his new supply. And so when I bump into him and his new supply, he said he was coming out of the door. He was coming out of the door and I was going in. And he said, he says, "Hey, how you doing?" Oh my God. He said, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, hey, I'm pissed off. I'm instantly pissed off because I can't believe he just dissed me like this. Like, talking about something, hey, how you doing? And go hold the door for her. So I walked in the store, but then I abruptly walked out. I was like, F this. I turned back around and walked back out the door. And at this point, I kind of knew I better not walk over there. But all my bells and whistles and alarms and everything, all my internal stuff was going off, so I could not say anything. So the first thing I did was call her name out, which was the name that popped up every time she would call him when he and I were together. And so I called her name out, and they both froze in their tracks. Both of them froze in their tracks. And he was in mid-sip whatever beverage they had just got from this little convenience store. He was in mid sip. And now that I know what I know about narcissists or whatever, and having glee within a dramatic situation that they've caused, it, that they're getting energy and fuel from this, I swear I think I almost saw this fool spit the drink out. His lips were pursed in just like a weird type of way, to where it was like, damn, was he about to accidentally lose control of his mouth and spit the damn drink out of his mouth? And so anyway, I call her name and I'm like, hey, I'm sick because I'm messed up or whatever, y'all. So I'm like, hey, I'm such and I deal with him, and so but I'm not the type that wants to deal with someone that's dealing with someone else at the same time. If you guys have labels and titles and stuff like that. So she turns and looks to him, which was alarming, because it's like, it was for approval and not for, I'm finna slap you when we walk off. It was more like, it was like she needed his permission. And so when she did that, it was like, oh my God, because that couldn't have been me. She couldn't have been me, and she was asking me the same thing I was asking her, and me do that without, like, I wouldn't have had an apprehension look. I would have had a look of, I know she not lying, I'm finna slap you as soon as we get behind these closed doors type feeling. Like, but her reaction made me feel like she knew a part of him that I didn't know, that like he might be violent. So I'm not making fun of her, but it was just like, woo, I'm sitting here asking questions. She might be getting slapped, she might be getting beat up behind them closed doors, and that's probably why she's spending all the time with him, because he's able to get stuff off on her that he know not happening with me. It's just not going down, because I'm mentally, or I was broken as far as not having a dad and stuff like that, but at the same time, I wasn't raised in no house where women was getting beat up. If I was raised in a house, if a fight went down, it was, people was defending themselves, with nobody jumping on another person. It wasn't unfair or none of that. It was, people got the issue off, and that's what it was. So that was a whole new dynamic for me, and it kind of made me say, damn, you know what? I think what them coaches say, I am better off, because ain't no telling what she going through, because if he calling me 4 days out of 7 or 3 days out of 7, and she over there pretty much 4 complete days or whatever, then she gotta be like more of a substantial amount of fuel than what I am. So, and that just means, and he had already said she was young. So, but that was from a previous situation too, and I'll get back into that another time as well.